This is the Drake Passage, and this is what it's like to navigate through its waters. The Drake Passage is the 1,000-kilometer stretch between the southern tip of South America and the northern edge of the Antarctic Peninsula, and is considered the deadliest stretch of water in the world. It is so deadly that despite being the largest passage connecting the Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean, ships totally avoid this passage. Instead, they choose to pass either through the Panama Canal or the Strait of Magellan. Not just ships, even planes try their best not to fly over it. The passage has been a graveyard for countless ships, and numerous accidents have happened here. Sailors often describe the two moods of Drake Passage as Drake Shake and Drake Lake. Drake Shake refers to the Drake Passage when it is at its roughest, and Drake Lake refers to the Drake Passage when it is calm and smooth. However, it is far more often the former than the latter. But despite the dangers and challenges, the Drake Passage holds immense significance. So today, let's try and answer two questions. What makes the Drake Passage so dangerous? And why is the Drake Passage so significant? And what makes it so critically important? But before we delve into these questions, let's first understand why is it called the Drake Passage. Well, you might think that it might have been discovered by someone named Drake, but that's not entirely true. The Drake Passage was discovered by Francisco de Hoces, a Spanish explorer. In 1526, while trying to navigate through the Strait of Magellan, his ship was blown southward by a storm. De Hoces and his crew reached a point around 56 degrees south, where they saw a vast open sea to the south, suggesting that South America might not be connected to a southern continent as previously believed. For this reason, Spanish and Latin American literatures and charts sometimes refer to this passage as Mar de Hoces or the Sea of Hoces. 52 years later, in 1578, something similar happened to an English explorer by the name Sir Francis Drake. Drake's ship was blown south of the Strait of Magellan during a storm, and his crew discovered that there was open water to the south, suggesting that South America was not connected to a southern continent. And from then on, the passage started being referred to as the Drake Passage. But if the passage was discovered by Hoces, why is it called the Drake Passage? Well, this is a prime example of history is often written by those who control the narrative. Sir Francis Drake was a high-profile English explorer, privateer, and a national hero. He became the second person to circumnavigate the globe and was widely celebrated by the English-speaking world. The English had a huge influence on navigation, mapping, and maritime tradition during and after the Age of Exploration, and this helped popularize his name globally. Spain at that time also closely guarded its geographic knowledge for strategic reasons. As a result, de Hoces' apparent sighting of the open sea wasn't widely known or acknowledged outside Spanish circles. The early maps and nautical charts were produced by the Dutch and the British, who were the dominant naval powers in the 17th century. These maps refer to the route as the Drake Passage, and over time the name just stuck. But even though the passage was discovered, it was never navigated by anyone. Finally, in 1616, Dutch explorers Willem Schouten and Jacob Lemaire, on a voyage financed by the Dutch East India Company, sailed around the southern tip of South America and through the Drake Passage. Before the opening of the Panama Canal in 1914, the Drake Passage was a crucial maritime route for trade between Europe, the Far East, and the southern continents. The Drake Passage and the Strait of Magellan were the only two navigable routes for ships traveling between the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. The Strait of Magellan was narrow and filled with islands, which made it tricky for the larger ships to navigate through it. The Drake Passage, though extremely dangerous, offered a faster and more open route for larger ships. The passage became quite popular during the California and Australian gold rush in the mid-1800s, and was also critical for the wool trade between Australia and Europe. Okay, now that we have some historical background of the passage, let's talk about what makes the Drake Passage so dangerous. One of the biggest reasons behind what makes the Drake Passage so dangerous is the presence of the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, or the ACC. The ACC is the strongest ocean current on Earth and the only current to completely encircle the globe. It circulates around Antarctica, moving roughly 130 to 150 million cubic meters of water per second. That's 500 times the Amazon River flow. Now, if you look at the Drake Passage, it is the narrowest stretch between Antarctica and any other continent. This forces the entire Antarctic Circumpolar Current through a relatively tight space, and this funneling amplifies the speed and turbulence of the waters. The ACC flows unimpeded by land until it slams into the Drake Passage. At the same time, the passage has a unique underwater topography. The seafloor is rugged with ridges and underwater mountains, which stir the ACC as it squeezes through the passage, creating subsurface eddies and upwelling that add to the surface instability. Roaring 40s, Furious 50s, and the Screaming 60s. These are the names of the powerful westerly winds that flow within the latitudes of 40, 50, and 60 degrees south, and the Drake Passage sits right within these winds. These relentless winds build over thousands of kilometers of open ocean due to the absence of major landmasses along their way. These winds generate huge waves that crash into one another from different directions. Waves in the Drake Passage regularly reach 9 to 12 meters, with rogue waves that can go up to 18 meters in height. The Drake Passage also experiences a phenomenon called the crossing seas or confused seas. Waves often come from different directions at the same time, some pushed by strong winds, while others arriving as swells from Pacific, Atlantic, and Southern Ocean. This makes it extremely difficult for ships to maintain stability. If the powerful Antarctic circumpolar current, fierce westerly winds, and towering waves weren't challenging enough, the Drake Passage also throws drifting icebergs into the mix. Icebergs and sea ice often drift north from Antarctica into the Drake Passage, adding navigational hazards especially in the colder months. Some of these icebergs can be several kilometers long, and some can be mega icebergs like the infamous A68 iceberg. In July 2017, the iceberg spanning about 5,800 square kilometers, that is almost 3 times the size of Tokyo, broke off from the Antarctic shelf and passed through the passage. Additionally, the weather in the Drake Passage can shift dramatically within hours. Calm seas can quickly turn into violent storms because of the mixing of warm subtropical air with cold polar air. The average temperature of the water here is around 0 to 5 degrees Celsius, and it gets even colder as you get closer to Antarctica. So if you fall into the water, before anything, it is the hypothermia that will get you. Drake Passage is situated far from major ports or rescue facilities, making assistance slow to arrive in the event of an emergency. The remote and inhospitable nature of the surrounding Antarctic region adds to the challenges of conducting rescue operations. Okay, now let's understand what makes the Drake Passage so important. Perhaps the greatest contribution of the Drake Passage is its role in regulating the global climate system. So to understand how the Drake Passage regulates global climate, we need to understand a term called the thermohaline circulation. Thermo refers to temperature and haline refers to the salinity of the water. Thermohaline circulation is a large-scale ocean circulation driven by differences in water density, which are controlled by temperature and salinity variations in seawater. Cold, salty water is denser and tends to sink, while warmer, less salty water is lighter and rises. This density-driven movement causes deep ocean currents and vertical mixing, forming a global conveyor belt that circulates water throughout the world's oceans. The Antarctic circumpolar current is a critical component of the global thermohaline circulation, and by allowing the ACC to flow unimpeded, the Drake Passage helps connect the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans with the Antarctic waters. This circulation transports heat, dissolved gases, and nutrients around the globe, playing a crucial role in regulating Earth's climate by redistributing heat from the tropics to the poles. Another vital function of the Drake Passage is its role as a carbon sink. The Drake Passage plays a significant role in carbon dioxide absorption as part of the Southern Ocean, which is one of the most important carbon sinks globally. The Southern Ocean absorbs about 40% of the carbon dioxide taken in by all the oceans, despite covering only about 25% of the ocean surface area. The Drake Passage is one of the most densely sampled areas within the Southern Ocean and has been shown to act as a persistent CO2 sink, particularly during the winter months. Thus, by acting as a carbon sink, the Drake Passage plays a crucial role in climate regulation and helps buffer global warming by removing atmospheric CO2. The Drake Passage also helps in maintaining the rich biodiversity of the Southern Ocean. The waters of the Drake Passage are teeming with marine life. It has some of the most nutrient-rich waters that support abundant phytoplankton, krill, and fish populations. These in turn feed whales, seals, penguins, and seabirds. It serves as a biological corridor, especially during migratory seasons, and is considered an ecological hot zone. Despite its notorious rough seas and dangerous conditions, Drake Passage remains the shortest sea route to Antarctica for explorers and researchers. The passage serves as a critical gateway for scientific missions to Antarctica. Research vessels launch from Ushuaia in Argentina and cross the Drake Passage to reach Palmer Station and other research bases in the Antarctic Peninsula. These expeditions study everything from glacial retreat and ocean acidification to marine biology and meteorology. In recent years, autonomous underwater vehicles and drifting buoys have been deployed in the passage to gather real-time data on ocean temperatures, salinity, and current velocity, providing crucial insight into climate models. Antarctic tourism has been on a rise, and the passage is extremely crucial from the tourism standpoint. Each year, thousands of tourists cross the Drake Passage to visit Antarctica. Cruise liners now offer 10-20-day voyages, typically departing from Ushuaia in Argentina. Cruise liners heading to Antarctica frequently advise passengers of possible delays and discomfort during the crossing. Seasickness, damaged equipment, and even structural stress on vessels are quite common. For tourists, the journey across the Drake Passage is often seen as a rite of passage. and the infamous Drake Shake just adds an extra layer of adventure to their polar experience. That brings us to the end of the video, and I hope you liked it. My name is Ajay and this is Alive and Curious. A lot of research and effort goes into making these videos, and I would love to have your support. So please like, share and subscribe to the channel, and I will keep bringing you more such stories from around the world. You may also consider becoming a member of the Alive and Curious community, which will give you access to the exclusive perks. Thank you. See you in the next one.